Welcome back to the Proximity is Power podcast. We got Sam Taggart in the house today. Sam, thanks for coming on, bro.
Pumped to be here.
I should say we're in Sam's studio, so thanks for having me here.
Yeah, I was like, well, it's more fun when I have to drive, you know?
Yeah. Pumped for today. Sam's been a mentor that I've looked up to for a while and followed his journey, and stoked to do the podcast. So a little bio on Sam for those of you that don't know who he is. I'm sure most of you listening do. Sam is a sales expert, entrepreneur, and keynote speaker, known for his work in door-to-door sales and business development. He's the founder of the Door-to-Door Experts, which specializes in training door-to-door people, reps, leaders, and owners. He's the creator of Door-to-Door Con, which is famous here in Utah, right? He created the Golden Door Award, which is super cool. He's the author of 3 books now: ABCs of Closing, The Self-Experience, and his newest one, Eat What You Kill. He's also the host of the Door-to-Door podcast. So super sick bio. Stoked for today, man.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
It's gonna be fun. So for those listening that have no idea who you are, give us like your 60-second background.
Knocked doors since I was 11. Built on the doors, bloody knuckles. Built teams. And then about 8 years ago, started Door-to-Door Experts, and just felt like there was a void in the space of like, how do I help unify, up level, bring honor and integrity to the space? And since then, we've trained tens of thousands of sales professionals and helped thousands of companies and any industry, whether it's solar, pest, roofing, whatever, you name it. I mean, last week we had a business boot camp where I think we had 12 different industries. We had turf, insurance, final expense insurance, so like death and mortuary insurance. You know what I mean? All sorts of like you'd see it, you know, you're just like, wow, you sell that door to door? Had like a guy that did concrete seawall repair, turf,
wow,
all sorts of stuff. You know what I mean? You're just like, what?
And they're all doing door to door.
All door to door.
Wow.
We had lawn treatment. We had all last week. I mean, that was just last week.
That's crazy.
So we've helped train a lot of different companies all over the country, all over the world. I mean, I've spoken Australia, Canada, Mexico, and helped scale companies, whether it's through their recruiting, their sales training, or their just leadership development. And I think that's where people get stuck. You know, I had a guy last week, and I mean, the guy that I'm going to connect you with today, Nick, he's like, I've been doing this since 2013. I just have one rep. You know, he's like,
wow.
And he's just like, I had 12 at one point, you know, for a summer.
Yeah, one rep in 12 years.
Yeah, and it's like, congrats, dude. Obviously, you're not doing it right. Or else you should have more than 12
for sure.
Or more than one. And I'm like, well, what do you need to do to become the entrepreneur to go get more? And I think a lot of times it starts with the individual. And so a lot of what we do is actually more coaching around personal development, leadership development, than it is the tactical like sales training or you know, the systems training. Like I actually have a 4th book called the DDD Blueprint that's all about like the scaling systems of scaling a business. And, you know, so it's like we teach that, but then I'm like 9 times out of 10, it's like, unless they become the person, then they're never going to go apply all the tactics.
Really interesting. Something Tony Robbins always says is, the biggest chokehold in your business and your life is the psychology of the leader or the person in it. And it's so funny that, like you need to go upgrade your psychology to go grow your business, and people don't understand that sometimes.
They get frustrated. And it's like when you get in a stagnant business growth, it's like what your whole podcast is. Proximity is power. Proximity is a way of upgrading your psychology. It's like, oh, there's people out there doing 100,000 accounts. I'm only doing 10. You know what I mean? Like you start to like open up your mind. I mean, even the side conversation we just had, it was like, oh, people would do that. And I met this guy and then he's thinking this way and I thought this way. And it's like, huh. And so opening your mind, exposure, and then evolving your internal world, then your external world will evolve.
For sure. Yeah, it's crazy because you really only change your life if you change what you're reading, listening to, or spending time, like who you're spending time with.
Yeah.
So question, what would you say to someone who's thinking about getting in the door-to-door space?
Why wouldn't you do it? And I think the most reasons would be you don't actually want to put the time and energy into doing it. And it's like anything great comes from like the grind. And you know, you're like, why didn't you be in the professional athlete? I don't know, probably because you wouldn't willing to put in the time and energy and the talent to actually go do it, to be the talent that you need to be paid like a professional.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, they're like looking for the easiest route in life. I interviewed Ed Milet on my podcast a few years ago.
That's sick.
And he's like, what you don't see, Sam, is the 10 years of door to door I did. And he's like, most people want what I have, the jets, the houses in Coeur d'Alene and all that stuff. But he's like, but nobody wants to talk about the 10 years I pound the pavement. And it's like, what better opportunity do you get to learn resilience, learn sales, learn like marketing than going out door to door? And if you look at really successful people and you put a track record of 3 years, 4 years, 10 years of door to door, give me that guy. Give me that guy. You know what I mean? Whatever it is they end up going and doing.
Yeah, it's like the quote, like, to be in the top 1%, do what 99% aren't willing to do.
Yes.
And then keep doing it, and then you just get way ahead fast.
Yes.
I love that. I was talking to this kid literally at lunch like an hour ago, and he's married with 2 kids, has bills, and he's been working in tech sales. He gets salary and then commission, but it's not great. Like, he doesn't feel like he can get ahead. He doesn't really have extra money at the end of each month. And he's considering door to door, but he's just like, has that fear of like, nothing's guaranteed. His wife's kind of that way too. And that's kind of holding him back. What would you say to that guy?
I remember Podium, Entrada, a couple of these big Weave, a couple of these big tech companies in the last 3 to 5 years have had massive layoffs, where they'll boost, you know, you'd think most of these tech companies actually probably aren't even profitable. And if you look at the actual economics, it's like you're selling a $300 a month subscription. They're paying you $6,000 a month. It's like the reality of you even making them money, let alone their marketing, their overhead, the developers and all the other shit. So it's like, do the math. Like at some point in time, you've got to be a profitable asset to their company, and they're all privately funded. So if I look at like where private equity is actually going, they're actually afraid of tech right now because of AI. And so the money's actually moving out of tech. And I was with a spinal surgeon yesterday. It's going into like, you know, chiropractic or spinal or accounting firms or, you know, essential services like roofing or pest or things like that. And you're like, okay, why is the money going there? Because there's more of it's never going to get disrupted. And then the second thing is like, okay, all of a sudden they say, I hit my RMR. Now I'm going to just cut because I now need to focus on EBITDA. And then they cut you, which they did. So all these companies have had these massive layoffs because they're like, all right, now we need just to be profitable. And if we just keep the reoccurring, get rid of the expense, now we look really profitable. Well, that's just like tech 101.
Right.
So I'm like, what's guaranteed?
Nothing.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm over like, okay, you have a guaranteed base. But the reality is like you're living as a cog in this system, and they're going to get some multiple on their money once they need to become profitable and they got the reoccurring where they need to be. And so that's the whole game of tech. And so you're like, okay, let's like break down this like from a very simple game. If you get paid no base, you are 100% the value, 100% the value. Hence why I have a book called Eat What You Kill. Yet if you build a muscle in your life where you don't need a base because you know you're so good at creating business, you will always have a job. You will always be wanted, and you will always be successful in whatever it is that you do because you're not dependent. Because right now that kid's dependent and he's playing for his base instead of he's playing for his life and career that he's out to be.
Wow. Well said. No, for real though. Like if you're good at door to door and you add value, you're always hireable anywhere.
Yeah, I would tell the kid, okay, if you don't do door to door, go to your boss and say, what would it look like if I didn't have a base and went 100% commission? How much more could I get? That's the question I'd ask.
Wow. And if you think about it, like anyone getting paid salary or hourly, like they're making more for the company than they're getting. Obviously.
Or they will get cut at some point.
Exactly. And so it's like you're adding that much value, you're adding more value than what your wage is anyway. You might as well go get your own, you know?
Yeah.
What advice do you have for someone looking at door to door, like to figure out which company they should work for or what industry to get into? What would you say?
It depends how long you want to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like I look at fiber right now and it's a great industry, but you're like, okay, what's the longevity? And you're like, okay, I looked at satellite and it was a great industry 5 years ago. And
It's not anymore.
And it's not that anymore. I mean, there's still people selling satellite and it works in some markets, but you look at solar and it's gone through its own ups and downs and it's a great industry, but you also are like, okay, what's the volatility? You look at companies like pest control, which it's like, it has not changed, only gotten better over the last 20 years. And there's no innovation to it. It's probably the same pesticide they used 20 years ago,
Right.
but it's boring, but it's like AI is never going to change it. You know what I mean? There's no governmental regulation. You look at roofing, you need a new roof, you do X, Y, Z. You look at HVAC, same thing. You know, those are essential services that it's kind of like, not if somebody wants it, it's like people need it. And the only way that they're going to probably buy it is through door to door. But there's no like store in the mall that's competing with you. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to the roof store.
Right. Or the pest control store. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, if I can put myself in a market that is kind of innovatable, like it can't be innovated, where your pay is good and then you believe in it. Cause I think the other side is like, don't sell something you don't believe in. And that was like my struggle. And I had to like learn to believe in alarms, learn to believe in solar. And now I believe in both, but it was a learning curve for me to be like, oh, people actually need this. Because what happens is most young bucks, they don't own a home. So it's not like they're paying utilities or
They
services.
don't have crazy expenses. Yeah.
Like so for them, it's hard to go believe in pest control. And they're like, man, it's $700 a year or whatever. They can't even afford anything in their life. So it's like,
It's more money than they've spent all year. Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, the guy has a $3,000 mortgage like every month.
Yeah.
$700 or $50 a month is not
Gonna
crazy.
affect them at all. Really.
Yeah, but you're still in a broke mindset of like, I'm just trying to make $3,000 a month, let alone have a $3,000 mortgage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I remember my first year selling it, and it was like when contract values were $450, and I'm like, this is so much money, $129 every 3 months. But I feel like once I started investing in rental properties and stuff, and like you call somebody out for a broken anything, you're looking at $500, you know? And so it really gave me the belief that like this is a needed expense and it's not that expensive.
It's not. Like I was going through my books yesterday night because I was like, man, we need to cut some expenses. And my software expenses last month was $62,000.
Wow.
Just in a monthly software expense.
That's a lot.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As a business. Like, and I'm like trying to see which ones I can cut. And like I did this whole analysis of like, do we use it? Yes or no? I was like, shit, we use like most of these. And they're like 60, 500, 400, 300. And you're like, damn, I'm getting hit with like a lot of monthly softwares, but I'm like, I run a business and like, sorry, it's a cost of running a business. You could either like do it on like manila folders and stuff. And like, you know what I mean? But like, I look at like, you know, it's hard because most of the people in here are like 62,000. That's just one line item on my books.
Right.
So you, as you grow and develop, it's hard to see that until you've been there. And now, like you said, once I buy a house, I'm like, oh yeah, I had to pay $500 to a plumber to come fix something for 45 minutes. I want to shoot myself. And you're like, that's just what they charge. And you're just like, damn it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, as you get into an industry, I actually don't think it's necessarily so much the industry more than it is the team.
And the company, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, as you pick, you might be, let's just use like Aptive, for example. It's like there's 100 teams, let's say. Not all teams are created equal. Does that make sense? So it's like, you might go with one dude that's just like a brand new team lead that's like, and I'm like, what leadership skills did he have? What track record of actually training reps and developing them into top performers? What like, you know, and ask those questions like, what's your average guy make last year? What's your backends look like? And most of the reps don't know how to ask those questions. And I'm like, okay, I want to look for the best, not pay, but the best team that produces pound for pound, the best guys and say, can I be on that team?
Yeah.
Because the risk factor goes down because you're like, well, if you've produced this many of this many guys, the average of the 5 people I'm around, naturally by default, proximity, I should do well.
Yeah. So like look at stats, look at track record, and look for people that have done it, that do it well.
Yeah.
Love that.
Way more important than pay. If you're like, I'm getting 5% here, I'm like, dude, run. Like, don't go after pay.
Yeah. I love that. What's your advice for first year sales reps?
First year reps, a lot. Give yourself grace. My first year, I made 20 grand. Look where I'm at now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's like crazy.
And I think a lot of people, they don't realize like 20 grand would be great. That's what they pitch you on. Hey, my average guy is gonna make 20 grand. And then you're like, I didn't make 70 grand like that one guy. It's like, yeah, but he's been selling for 3 years and he's a freaking savant. Like, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, maybe you only made 10 grand. Maybe you only make 15 grand. But then the second year I made 80 grand. And it's like, I doubled down on my training. Then the next year I made like 260 grand and I doubled down on my training. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think the problem is people don't even know they need to be trained until they actually get their face kicked in. And then they're like, oh, I need to train.
Yeah.
Like I need to know what I actually am doing instead of just like go out and wing it. So if I'm a first year right now, I would be doing everything in my power, scrounging up quarters to invest in my training so that come summer, I had so much power and confidence going into the summer. And then during the summer, when everybody's playing Xbox till midnight and everybody's doing whatever, I'm like watching videos. And like the company's going to provide you like 5, 10 videos or 20 videos. Congratulations. Like we give you 8 to 9 hours on DDD University of like highest level, top golden door dudes, multi-golden door dudes in the field, like real good training that I haven't seen any company even put a candle to. And so I'm like, cool. There's one thing of like, I got free videos on YouTube. There's, I got a free podcast. And then there's like, I put my money into something that was clear as day, exactly what it's saying do, on a very curriculum base and with a certification at the end. You know what I mean? Like an actual like catered, structured curriculum versus like, I watch Instagram. I'm like, yeah, but you're sitting there distracted. You're not really, you're watching Instagram. Yeah. You're not training. There's no test. There's no quiz. There's no like pass off. There's no verification. There's no certification. There's no role play where we do that with like every rep that goes through our stuff. We actually get them on the phone with us and we actually do a pass off. And then they come to our event. We do a pass off because we're like, we want to know that you trained.
Actually, you applied it. Yeah.
Yeah. Not like you watch some YouTube videos. Congratulations.
Yeah. I feel like there's a difference between like, passively training and like actively, like the role playing. And,
that's training.
Yeah.
One's consuming, one's training.
Yeah. And I love what you said too, like give yourself grace because like so many first year reps, get down on themselves if they don't make what they thought. And also like reps that are looking at this opportunity in door to door sometimes make a year one earning decision where like you said, like door to door, like compounds and like this last year I made more than my first 5 years combined. And it's like, it just gets better over time if you just stick with it and you get better and you train.
I think people like, I love that, this first year decision. Yeah. Cause it's like, had I been making a decision off of 20 grand in one summer and done, I would have never reaped the benefits of a third. So like, hey, if you sign a 3-year contract, like an NBA player, it's like they sign a 3-year contract, right? I'm gonna pay you $16 million for this 3-year contract. Well, think of your summer as like, hey, it's a 3-year contract. The first year, you're only getting a very, very, very small piece. Your second year, you're gonna get a bigger piece. And your third year, you're gonna get a fat piece of my 3-year contract. Could you commit to that?
For sure.
And then people would be like, well, I don't know. It's like, commit to the 3-year contract.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know. It's guaranteed that I can teach you. You can drink more Kool-Aid, and I show you thousands and thousands of case studies that is proven. Very proven. I don't see many guys go from first year to second year and get worse.
Never.
Like it doesn't happen. So I'm like, okay, I could confidently say your second year is going to be better than your first. And then I can confidently say your third year, you could either plateau, but if you followed our system and strategy, like I don't see it happening. Yeah. So therefore it's like unlock all 3-year contract by making a decision to do that today.
I love that. I think so many reps, it's sad to see like that have so much potential, so much talent. And then they just do this no summers or one summer and quit. Like something Casey Baugh teaches is like, everyone should do door to door at least one summer. But if you're going to do it one summer, you need a 5-year plan. Yeah. Cause like that's really when you really start reaping the results and the rewards from all the sowing. So yeah. What's some advice that you have for the leaders?
Man, I sucked at managing. Just to also put things in perspective, 20 grand my first summer. My first year managing, I was a co-manager. I had 8 guys come out with me, and there was like 25 on the team. And none of them came back. We won the cup. We had a great per rep average. One of them's the president of Alder right now. One of them's the VP of inside sales at Vivint. One of them, and they're badass dudes. Like they're ballers. Didn't come back with me the next year. You know what I mean? So it's like, you suck as a manager, Sam. Then the next year, same thing. I had 2 guys come back out of like 25.
Why do you think they weren't coming back?
I just didn't know how to manage. Like I was really good at selling, and I still struggle with this. Like I'm so impatient, and I'm very much like, just do it. Come on, let's go. And I learned this quick, but it's the curse of knowledge. So if you're going to go be a team leader, a manager, the question is, what training have you actually had when it comes to leadership more than a Maxwell book? Does that make sense? So let's go back to like the same thing of training. You're like, oh, I'm going to be a manager, and there's so much focus on recruiting. Well, guess what? If none of those recruits sell and they all never come back because you suck at leading like I did for 2 years,
it's worthless.
What was the point of recruiting?
And you burn bridges.
You just burn, and we call it the graveyard. You just made a bunch of people die because they didn't actually succeed.
Yeah.
And that falls on your head. And so for me, leadership is the greatest asset of influence that you could invest in, that is better than most. And that's where we spend most of our time. As much as people are like, oh, Sam, you're good at sales. You wrote a sales book or this or that. I'm like, 90% of our revenue comes from business owners or business leaders because the broke reps don't get it. And I'm like, if I can teach the leaders how to go teach their reps, I have a way bigger pool of impact. Like the ripple effect goes so much farther. If I have 100 CEOs in my mastermind group, take all over the world. I have an elite mastermind that teaches leadership. We're going to Hawaii next month. And I teach these guys for days on end. I'm like, let's talk about like, how do you coach a rep out of a slump? Let's talk about how do you go run your meetings? How do you schedule your calendar? How do you actually deal with a rep that's having mutiny? How do you deal with, does that make sense?
Create culture.
And create a culture that people want to be a top performer versus like, why aren't you selling? It's like, and that's where most guys get. They get stuck after like 5 meetings and they're like, well, I'm out of content to train on, or nobody's listening to me. Why aren't you showing up on time?
Yeah.
And you're like, crap, it's Sunday. Like, what the fuck? Why is this guy going to a strip club? And you're just like, bah. You see what I'm saying? Like, I've been there.
I hear that. So advice, like, let's say someone is going to their first year managing or leading. Like, what would you tell them to do?
So I have a 101-page playbook that I would get. It's called the Sales Manager Playbook. And it's broken into categories. And so if you do not have a plan going into your year, you're already behind. And what happens is most people show up planless, and then they're very reactive. Where if I can already prejudge and pre-speculate all of the problems that are going to be happening, now I've got like, okay, I kind of already knew this was going to happen. Guys are going to start to want to quit after about a week or two. Here's what my plan was. And I already had a system built around avoiding that.
I love that.
And I had a system around promoting my team leads, or the guys that kind of already start to show promise within their first 3 to 4 weeks and step up. And I'm like, man, these guys are like talent that I didn't know were going to be the talent because I couldn't know until we first started. So I already got a plan for them. Does that make sense? So I've kind of already pre-planned area licensing. I've pre-planned housing and fall off for housing. I've pre-planned, hey, if we get kicked out of this city, where am I going for this city? I pre-planned my training curriculum, not for just like the new guys, but for the vet guys. Not for just the vet guys, but my next managers that don't want to come back in 2026. Does that make sense? So when I talk about designing my leadership, it's systematically putting the SOPs, the people in place, the captains, so that I'm not just like, rah, rah, let's go. It's more like I'm leading, because what happens is you're hard to follow when you're just the glorified sales guy that happens to have a team.
I love that. Yeah, the separations and the preparation.
Yes.
Yeah. What are common mistakes you see door-to-door reps make and just people in the industry?
A lot. I think they take it for granted. So think of the word mindfulness. A good definition I heard one time was like doing something for the first time. And so what happens is in door-to-door sales, because it's so repetitive, even year over year, it's like how many veterans are like, this is my last summer.
So many.
And then they go back the next year and like, this is my last summer. And then you're like, okay, you said that last year. And then they do it for 10 years. And I said that like 5 times too. And still I'm here. I'm teaching door to door. You know what I mean? It's like, so I think if you just said, I'm going to practice mindfulness and say, no matter where I'm at in my journey, it's like I'm knocking my first door. I'm knocking my first day. I'm knocking my first summer. And how would I treat it if I knew this was like my first summer? And it's like, man, I don't know if I can go back out right now. You know what I mean? When this comes out, it's like people are like getting anxiousness going like, oh, here goes another summer. I know what I'm in for 4 months. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, hold on. Let's pretend it was your first summer. Let's bring mindfulness and let the past be the past and let the future be the future and not stress over it, but practice like I'm here today. How do I make the most of now?
I love that. Like be where your feet are and go all in until you're not.
Until you're not.
Be all in until you're not.
Yes. And I watch too many people that are like exit plans and this, and I have this side hustle, and then they just suck at both. And then I'm like,
I think that's so smart because, that's why Casey says the 5-year plan thing. He's like, I don't care if you do this for 5 years, but you should have a 5-year plan and be all in until you have a better plan.
Yes.
Because like, you're probably going to be doing this for 5 years anyway. But if you're just all in and commit for 5 years, then you're going to be so much more proud of the results you got while you were here.
1000%.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that all the time. Like, so many reps don't look at this as like a career. They think about this as like a one and done thing or 2 summers. So what would you do on that? Because like so many people are like, oh, I want to get off the doors. I want to get off the doors.
Like they're just going to go on a different door. Yeah. Like think about that. I want to get off the door so you can what? Go knock a different door a different way. And like your tech guy. He's like, I got off the doors. Yeah, you're still cold calling as an SDR at a tech company with a base, and now you have a limit. Congratulations. Yeah, but my family. And I'm like, okay, like you can live a good balanced life even on the doors. Like you ask yourself, why are you exhausted? Why? Because you're doing a hard thing that's mundane and you haven't built the muscle to actually get sustainable at it. Think of like James Lord saying on Cowboy, like after doing 100 Ironman in 100 days, it was like the second half was actually easier than the first half. Why his body just had gotten used to, well, I guess I got to wake up and do another Ironman. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's just like, it's now just, this is a thing. And after he's done with this 101, he actually went into like a mental disarray because he was in such a overdrive, you couldn't drop into a parasympathetic state. And it's like, because he just lived in such a high active go. And so sometimes it's like, that's okay. Like we just need to live in a way that we can be in a drive. And if you go to try to like get off the doors, what you end up finding is you're like, man, I wish I could have an opportunity like on the doors. And then you're like, I'm on the doors. And then you're wishing I could get off the doors. Yeah, and now what are you doing? You're just doing your own internal conflict. And I'm like, everywhere you go is going to be doors in some sort of category. So just embrace that. It's where you are in your life.
I love that. And yeah, if you go like get off the doors to go get like a salary job, there are problems with that too. Like you're capped, right? Like, and you have to, I love that. Let me ask you this. Investing. So many reps like go out, make more money than they ever have and go buy a car that's more money than their entire net worth. So what would you tell someone once they make, let's say 100K, like what to invest in and why?
Well, my first invitation is just not once you make 100K to start becoming an investor. I think this is where the misperception, and what's funny is you bought a house for me, which is like a fun.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I was like, oh, and it was one of the best investments for you and for me.
Yeah, it's been great.
It's been a great one.
Yeah.
And I was sad that I had to
let it go.
Had to let it go. And it was just where I was at in life. I was like, I need to get rid of this. I wish I kind of would have kept it now.
It's a monster.
It's a monster. But
13 bedrooms.
But like, how much money do you have to put down to buy that house?
Yeah, it was like 120
grand of extra money. Where most people, it's like, well, you just said, what happens when you make 100 grand? It's like, well, you had 120 and this is back like 5 years ago that like, you know what I mean? So what I'm saying is most people there don't have an expendable. So they're sitting there going, I only got 10 grand to invest. And then they're like, I can't get into real estate or I can't get into, and then they go put it in a high risk crypto or some guy sells them on some stupid, crazy investment. And I'm like, before you have just an extra 100 grand to invest in yourself.
Amen.
And I think when I say invest in yourself, it's not watching YouTube. It's not listening to this podcast. It's actually putting dollars into yourself. Like when you say Tony Robbins, like pay the $4 grand to go to a ticket and spend time there. Go to DoorDoorCon. Go, like, how many people are like, oh, I can't go to DoorDoorCon, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you're waiting for your manager to buy your ticket? Like, you want the owner to pay for your ticket? Like, I don't know. Did your dad pay for your college?
Right.
Like, good job, dude. And it's almost like they're afraid. So I'd buy every book. I'd buy every course. I'd buy everything that was super relevant to exactly what I do because it compounds. Because when you could sell, let's say, you're like, I made 60 grand. So I don't have 100 grand to go invest into real estate. So you're like, okay, I made 60 grand. If I could make 60 grand in a year, what if I could make it in a month? That's the difference between investing in yourself and not. Because I know guys that'll make 60 grand in a year, and I know 60 guys that make that in a week.
Yeah.
And you're like, what's the difference between them and you? They invested in themselves and got better and better and better and better and better. to where now making $100,000 investment is like, well, that's like 3 weeks of work. And then I could go buy another property. And then, you know what I mean? That's how they're thinking, where you're sitting there kind of like, wow, that's like impossible with all my bills and shit, because you don't know how to actually perform at the highest level. So I would make it my obsession to find anything and everything. And a shameless plug, Eat What You Kill, the book, DDD University, our mastermind. Like we have all the sorts of stuff, specialized knowledge like that's specifically in this. Like there is no other place that has specialized knowledge of, let me put my money into something other than us.
Yeah.
And so it's like, where can I go put energy, time, and money of my investment to then see how I get a $60,000 in a year to $60,000 in 6 months to $60,000 in a quarter to $60,000 in a month to $60,000 in a week to $60,000 in a day.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
I love that. Yeah, Jeff Mendez says the best investment you can make is in real estate, but the best real estate's in between your ears.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah. He's like, you really are your best asset. And it's like, I like what you said too. Like you got to go invest real dollars into it, because you only value what you spend your time, your money, and your energy on. And like a couple of years ago, I was looking at it. I'm like, yeah, I like value personal development. I invest in myself. I go to door con. I buy a couple books a year. But I looked at how much like of a percentage of what I invested in myself, and it was like less than 1%. And I'm like, I need to go put real dollars. And so this last year, I spent over $100K just on personal development stuff. Like
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
And it's scary. But guess what? You just wait.
There's no guarantee. Yeah.
Rewind though. You just said I made 5 times more money though.
I did. It paid for itself.
Like think about that. So like what you just said, you're like, I just made the scariest dollars, like more than most people make on listening to this. He invested in personal development. But earlier, and I caught this, he had 5 times the growth. But what's crazy is the investment of his $100,000 is compounding, just like your first year, second year, third year. He gets to use that knowledge for the rest of his life. He gets to say, I can't come back from that.
Yeah.
You get to like reap this for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
10 years.
It was something that Alex Hormozy said. He's like, let's say you want to make $1 million and you're making $50,000 a year. He's like, it's costing you $950,000
not making that.
Not make that. He's like, so what you have to do is you have to go buy the year, like you have to go buy the knowledge that's going to get you there faster. And I just like, it made so much sense to me. And then like now I'm like, okay, it's costing me $4 million every year not to make $5 million a year, you know? And it's just, you just keep doing it.
100%.
So, I love that. And it's going back to like the biggest chokehold in your life and your income and your business is the psychology. And like, you're basically paying to upgrade your psychology faster by getting in proximity with people that have done it at a higher, faster level than you.
Yeah. And I pay, it's funny. People are like, Sam, like, what have you invested in? I was like, a lot of real estate, a lot of crypto, a lot of all these other things. But it's like every year I say, who do I want to get to know? And I get to pay them to come to DoorCon, and I get to hang out with them.
That's so sick.
And like Erwin McManus, I said, I'm taking you to Iceland this year.
Wow.
Colin O'Brady, he came to Croatia with us last year. So like Sean White, I negotiated snowboarding with him for the day. Like I negotiate in my contracts a private.
Bro, I didn't know that. Yeah. That's genius.
So that I can create the proximity.
Wow.
So every one of them, I negotiate a private breakout session with my mastermind, the Circle. So all my CEOs, we get to go ask Jordan Peterson, Ed Milet, Tim Grover, all the people, and we get to go hang out. Eric Thomas. Like we did private
Jesse
breakouts.
Itzler.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So now I become friends with Jesse Itzler. Now I become friends with Harry Mack. When Mike Posner was like, here's my cell phone number. And then he connects me to John Bellion, a guy that I've always wanted to meet too. And then it becomes... And I think people are like, well, how'd you do that? I'm like, I don't know. I paid Jordan Peterson $190,000 to come for 45 minutes. I mean, that's not cheap.
That's a lot of money.
I paid, Lance Armstrong, $50,000.
Yeah.
Harry Mack, $50,000. You know what I mean? And it's like, I fork out more money than than most people.
Wow.
And so and that's just so I can help you guys, but I take a selfish approach to it because I know this principle of proximity is power. And I have, if you looked at my cell phone, you'd be like, damn, your Rolodex of contacts is pretty damn deep.
That's so sick. Dude, I never thought of that. Like, wow, I need to start a proximity is power event and literally just start having you comment.
Yeah, dude. It's like, I'm like, well, if I'm going to pay you, like, wow. I'm a sales guy. I'm going to negotiate.
So sick.
Yeah.
Wow. Sam's playing chess when we're all playing checkers. Yep. Sounds like. Last couple of questions. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. 3, 2, 1 pivot. What are 3 books that have impacted you the most and why? 2 people and 1 quote.
So many books. I think a big one is Awareness. It's my top book by Anthony DeMello. On a business book, Traction. And on a sales book, the very first good sales book I read was Psychology of Selling.
Brian Tracy.
By Brian Tracy.
That's gold.
So I just think like, okay, let's go categories. I remember Leadership and Self-Deception was like my leadership book that was like, kick to the nuts.
Yeah, the box.
Yeah, dude. I was like, that is me.
Yeah.
That was my turning point in leadership. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Like, 2 people. That one's a hard one. I think my dad, number 1. He's just been a great mentor, great example. And Jesus. And you look at the example of Jesus and just like the amount of teachings and wisdoms he brings. Those are my 2 people.
I love that.
And then my 1 quote. Oh, so many. Freak, dude. I don't know. Let's pull up some of my good mantras. I'll just read you a bunch of my mantras.
Yeah, let's do it.
Quotes are different than mantras. And I think there's a difference between understanding quotes, but my mantras come from like life experiences that I end up going and creating. So I think that the adaptation of quotes, and when you deal with something or you run into something like we're king's kids. Like it's not, I don't know who quoted that or wherever I came up with that, but it's like, if God's a king and we're sons and heirs of the king, we're king's kids. And so it's like, you think it like, you take like that and it's like, look, I have a whole list of them, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, where do I start? But like a latest one that I've come up with that has been really helpful for me is observation versus obligation versus alignment. And when I check in on, like, for example, when you asked me to come down to Provo and was like, hey, will you be on this podcast during President's Day? I was like, man, that's out of obligation. Like, I actually don't want to go. Like, I have 3 podcasts, a keynote, and today. So, and I go to Florida tomorrow to do another event, to then the next day to do 2 events, to the next day do another event in Florida. So I have 4 events in Florida, different events this week.
You're wild.
And I have 5 speeches today. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm like, to drive, and guess what? President's Day, I had my girls. And I'm like, I feel obligated to go. Is it okay for me to like change the date? And the old Sam would have been like, no, I can't fudge on a guy. I kept my word, right? Then the observation piece is I'll go because I just want to, I'm curious. Like, I want to meet you. I want to see you. I want to kind of, I'm observing. It's not necessarily that I align with it. Like, I wouldn't say I've subscribed to this thing or I like can say I believe this, but I'm just observing this. Does that make sense? Then alignment is like, yes, it's a win-win. We do. It feels good. There's synergy. Let's go. And so like, I love kind of living life that way.
Say it one more time.
Observation, obligation, or alignment.
Wow. That's cool. Last question. If you had the world's attention for 2 minutes, what would you want them to know?
Boy, these are deep. I think we're kings of a king, or we're sons of a king. I think so many people underestimate the power of like abundance and their opportunity to manifest, their opportunity to create, their opportunity to like freely live. And we trap ourselves in society through these indoctrination camps or these limiting beliefs through your parents, through your proximity, right? And we underestimate the power of just practicing full abundance because we're meant to be kings. We're meant to have it all. We're meant to be fit, healthy, happy, with great relationships. But with that comes opposition. And it's like, embrace that.
I love that. Yeah. When you think about it, like, we're sons of a king, like, you have no cap on what you can do. Like, you can do anything. I love that. Where can people find you, Sam?
The Sam Taggart on Instagram, or DDD Experts on YouTube, Instagram. Like I said, if you're somebody that's like, I want to actually invest in myself, we're kind of the place to help you, whether it's mentorship, mastermind, online training, events. We have some sales boot camps coming up all over the country right now.
Love that.
Leadership boot camp next week. Here in Utah, we do a lot of events. But here to support, you know what I mean?
Awesome. Dude, you're the man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've read your book, ABCs of Closing. It's lights out, and I'm excited to read your new one. I haven't read it yet, but
I'll get you a copy.
So sick. Dude, last thing, you're a stud, and I just appreciate like the impact you're making in door to door and just Utah in general. Like you're doing a lot of good for a lot of people, and I've been coming to Door to Door Con forever, so big fan.
Appreciate you supporting and showing up. You know?
Dude,
it's like if no one showed up, the party would be lame. Like, I remember we brought in Sugar Ray, also selfish move. I was like backstage with him, and I'm like, hey, is there any way I could like play with you? He's like, yeah, bro, get it up here. And I was like, no way, bro. So I got to like jam with Sugar Ray that night.
That's so sick.
And I remember I booked this and paid a lot of money, right? And then like I'm thinking like everybody's gonna come, and like only like 200 people show up, and I was like, what the freak? Like where everybody go? Like I paid for this like awesome band. I was like, well, selfish.
More private.
Yeah, I was like, well, I guess it's a littler event, but you know, and so it's always like a blessing when people show up and see the importance of chasing for the golden door, whatever industry you're in, or you know, supporting those that are actually out there learning, or you know, just knowing that one little piece of nugget that could change the rest of your year. And so save the dates, January 22nd and 23rd here in Utah, and hope to see everybody out there. So
awesome. I got a picture with Tim Grover because of you. So
he's the man.
He's awesome. Well, thanks again for listening, and go follow Sam, go get his books, and until next time, peace.